Hello, my friends, and welcome to your show, the MMA Grand and Pound Show. I'm your host, Enrique Solorzano, and today we have a lot to talk about. But first of all, let me welcome you to the Barborn TV network on ZINGOTV channel 250. Please remember to download both the Barborn and ZINGOTV apps in the respective app store on iOS and Android devices. Both apps are free. While you download them, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. ZINGOTV is also available on Google Chromecast and Chromecast TV sticks, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku TV sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. So, like I said, we have a lot to talk about. So, let's start with the summary. So, we're going to talk about Anthony Pettis to PFL, Professional Fighters League. Then we'll talk about Dana White versus Diaz brothers. Then Yoel Romero to Bellator. And at last, we're going to talk about Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman. So let's start first of all with Anthony Pettis to PFL. So PFL is Professional Fighters League, like I said. And well, Anthony Pettis, he's a former UFC lightweight champion. And the last time he fought was in December. Well, for the UFC, he fought the last time in December against Alex Morono, and he got the W. He is one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, and I think all of us have seen the Showtime kick, right? When he walks around the cage and he gave a kick to I think Benson Henderson, but so that was the famous Showtime kick. So after his last fight, he was released by the UFC because the UFC announced that they were going through some company. They wanted to inject new talent to the UFC and to release some old talent, so to speak. So Anthony Pettis was one of those fighters that got his release papers, but it was pretty funny because after he was released by the UFC, maybe a couple of hours, maybe 1 or 2 days after, the PFL, Professional Fighters League, signed him. So what they want to do is they plan to make Anthony Pettis the face of the organization. Not many people know about PFL. And the thing is that it works different than the UFC. It's like the NFL, so to speak. It's the way matches take place is like a tournament style. So one fighter face another fighter, and the thing is that you can become champ after 1 year, after 12 months. So they run this tournament-like thing, and the final prize is $1 million. So a lot of people were wondering why Anthony Pettis would like to do that, especially because there are now other promotions such as one in Asia or Bellator in the States. But when he said that why he did that, it was because, now he's 33 years old, and the way the PFL works, he can become champion in a year. So if he wants to become champ again in the UFC, he needs to have many fights, maybe like 5 or 6, because he wasn't doing really well in the UFC. Even though he won his last fight, he was losing some, and he was like battling between like going up one weight class or going down. So that's why he signed with the PFL, and some ex UFC fighters have joined this MMA promotion, One of them is Rory McDonald, Canadian, which we remember from crazy fights such as the ones with Robbie Lawler. So that fight was total mayhem. They went all the way, and Rory McDonald had to keep up because I think he has his nose broken by by oh sorry, I forgot the name, by Robbie Lawler. Yeah, so Robbie Lawler is a beast, right? And yeah, he broke Rory McDonald's nose. Another great fighter that has joined PFL is Fabricio Verdum, who was a UFC former champ in the heavyweight division. So yeah, this move for Anthony Pettis, I think it's very good and it's very smart because, like he said, he's 33. That doesn't mean he's old, not at all. What it means is that he wants to pursue like another belt. He was a champ in the UFC. He has been champ on other MMA organizations. So I think he wants to retire soon, but he wants to get as many belts as he can. And he had a good run in the UFC. He had a very good run. Uh, he for sure he moved the needle, like Dana White says, with fights. So every fight, every Anthony Pettis fight, like sold for sure, and he's a very entertaining fighter to watch. So let's see how he does in PFL. We wish sorry, Anthony Pettis the best, and let's see what he does on that organization. So now let's talk about Dana White versus the Diaz brothers. So some of you may be wondering what does that mean? Okay, so what happened is that Dana White, during an interview, he said that he doesn't think that Nick Diaz is ready to compete in the sport. He was saying that the Nick Diaz we have seen recently is not the same Nick Diaz we have seen maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, right? I remember when he fought George St. Pierre GSP in 2013, 7 years ago. Maybe it will be about in March, I think it happened. So it'll be around 8 years ago. And by that time, Nick Diaz, we were expecting more from him, right? So I agree with Dana White. Maybe he's not old, but I don't think he has it in it. Like he doesn't have that hunger, so to speak. So that happened. But why do Dana White said that? So what happened is that this comes due to that Nick Diaz manager. He said that Nick Diaz is almost 100% sure that he will fight in 2021. So many people follow Diaz brothers. I love like why they fight. I remember that back in the day there were this magazine called UFC. So on that magazine, they had a lot of interviews from different fighters, and one of those magazines, in one of those magazines, it was an interview by Nick Diaz, and he said that he fights because when he grew up in a bad neighborhood, so martial arts helped him to canalize all that bad energy into positive energy. So that's pretty awesome. And he said that he doesn't like to fight. He's like, I don't like fighting because it's like you with another guy in an octagon and he wants to hurt you. So you're very nervous. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's like very interesting mindset, especially coming from a guy like Nick Diaz, right? So what about Nick Diaz in the octagon? So His last fight took place in 2015, maybe 6 years ago, against Anderson Silva, and he lost. He lost that fight, and then it was ruled a no contest because both fighters failed a drug test. And on that fight, he didn't look. He didn't give us his best performance, right? But what about Nate? Nate, I think he has been the more popular brother these days. He fought for the last time in 2019 against Jorge Masvidal, and he lost due to doctor's stoppage. I remember I went to a bar when we could go to bars, right? And I watched that fight, and I wasn't surprised by his performance. Masvidal dominated that fight completely, and I don't know what was going on through Nate Diaz's head, but he didn't perform the greatest as well. And the thing is that his record is not very impressive. He's 2012, so that record is not very impressive, like I said. But he is a very popular fighter, and a lot of people are expecting to see Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 3. So the first fight, it was surprising. I think nobody expected Nate Diaz to win that fight. He did, fair and square. And the rematch was very thrilling. It was a very good fight. McGregor won that fight by unanimous decision. So a lot of people, me included, we are expecting that fight to come to fruition. But Dana White, he hasn't scheduled any of these guys any fight. There are no fights for them, and I don't know where they could fit. A lot of people were wanting Nate Diaz to fight Michael Chandler from Bellator. Now he's in the UFC, so I don't know. I would like to see Nate Diaz fight, or maybe I would love to see both the Diaz brothers fighting in the UFC, but they need to show us that they still have a fight in them because they're not getting any younger. And like I said, they don't fit in the rankings in the weight classes that they fought the last time. Some of them, I don't think they will even fit into the top 15. So let's see what happens with these brothers, which are very exciting fighters to watch for sure. Okay, so now let's move on to another UFC fighter that was released. Well, now he's not in the UFC anymore. So Yoel Romero goes to Bellator. Okay, so if you don't know who Yoel Romero is, he's a fighter from Cuba. He has an extraordinary physique. He's a former UFC middleweight contender, and he lost his last fight against Israel Adesanya, which is the middleweight champion. That fight, like I said, I think on many of these shows, it was one, if not the most disappointing fight of the year, of last year, of 2020, because he just stood there. And I understand Adesanya being very cautious, right? Because Yoel Romero, he has crazy punching power. So he was expecting Yoel Romero to engage, and Romero didn't do anything. So he was standing there, and they went all the way 25 minutes of no action. So I don't recommend you to watch that fight because it was kind of boring. And obviously Adesanya kept the belt. So like I said, during the end of 2020, the UFC reported that they wanted to release some fighters. Even though they were popular fighters, they were like old fighters, so to speak. So Yoel Romero was one of them. He was caught by the UFC, and some days later, Bellator knocked to Joel Romero's door. So now Romero, he's part of Bellator. He's a very popular fighter. He was a big part of the UFC, but like I said, he was part of the plan of releasing around 60 fighters. And also the thing is that Romero, he lost 4 of his last 5 fights. Even though he's still one of the most popular fighters in MMA, he appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I think like some memes emerged from that participation, right? So if you haven't seen it, that episode, that Joe Rogan episode with Joe Romero is pretty interesting. He talks about how it was growing up in Cuba and how he became a wrestling champion in the Olympics. So he's an Olympian, and he talked about how he keeps that amazing physique that he has. Romero, he gave us great fights in the UFC. I don't know if you remember the Stoolgate. So he fought Tim Kennedy like some years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And at the end of the round, they had to rest for 1 minute, right? So Romero's corner, they left the stool. And the referee, he told Romero's team they have to remove the stool. And they pretended, or I don't know if they couldn't hear the referee. So Romero got like some extra seconds of the break, right? And Tim Kennedy was about to knock Romero out at the end of the round. So Kennedy says that that Romero had a lot of time to recover, etc., and that could impact on the outcome of the fight. So I don't know. It was fishy for sure, but I don't know if that dramatically changed what happened on that fight. And also, he gave us great performances, such as when he fought Robert Whittaker twice when Whittaker was the champ. So they went all the way for 5 rounds. And like even Whittaker at the end of one, I think at the end of the second fight, he said that Romero hits like a truck. And Whittaker couldn't knock Romero out. He's a very durable fighter. I don't think he has been knocked out. I think he has lost only by decision. And there's like the myth that no fighter is the same after fighting Romero. So I don't know if that's true, but can you imagine like all the like what will happen to you after being in the octagon with this guy? So, and the thing is that Romero is 44 years old. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about seeing him like fighting again. And Bellator is a different level as a UFC. So a lot of former champs from the UFC, they have gone to Bellator and they have found success. For example, Lyoto Machida, he moved to Bellator and he won some fights. So maybe maybe Romero could become a champ on Bellator. So let's see what happens, and I'm pretty excited to see what's next for this fighter, for Joel Romero. And let's finish this show with Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman. So this fight is done. The UFC has booked Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman for UFC 258. And I didn't know, but this fight has been booked for the third time. So the first time they were supposed to meet, Burns got COVID-19. And then this fight was postponed to December. But the UFC, they decided to hold that date. And now we have that fight. And how about what about Gilbert Burns? So Burns fought for the last time against the former champ Tyron Woodley. He got the W, and he completely dominated Tyron Woodley. And he's in a 6-fight winning streak. So I think he deserves the shot at the title for sure. And Usman is a very like a polarizing champ because some people seem to love him, some people seem to hate him. I honestly don't like his style. I don't love his style, but he's a deserving champion. He has done amazing things. He is the welterweight defending champion. He became champ by defeating Tyron Woodley in 2019, and he destroyed Tyron Woodley completely. And he has defended the belt against Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington, which I think Colby is pretty. I think he's a pretty underrated fighter. Well, a lot of people hate hate Colby because he's very outspoken about his political beliefs. He has done some cringy things, but he knows how to. He really knows how to fight and how to wrestle. So he's an amazing wrestler, like as Usman, but he loves that fight fair and square. Uh, but this is very interesting that Usman hasn't lost since 2013. 8 years, 8 years without losing. Like I said, some people do not like his fighting style, but he's a deserving champ. So this weight class is pretty stacked. You have a lot of talent over here. It's Jorge Masvidal, Colby Covington, and this fight will clear the division for sure. Like I said, some people do not like Kamaru Usman as a champ because they don't like his fighting style. Some people say that he hugs everybody for a couple of minutes, and that's it. For example, here we can see like the rankings. So we have Leon Edwards, which is an amazing fighter for sure, or Stephen Thompson, and that fight with Thompson will be pretty interesting. But maybe it will finish the same way as when he fought Tyron Woodley. We watch that fight was a very boring fight as well. So let's see what happens with these guys. They're gonna face each other in a month or a little bit more, and it's gonna be a headliner. It's gonna be pretty interesting, and let's see if Usman can keep the belt or he will handle that belt to Gilbert Burns, which will shake up the entire division for sure. Okay, my friends, so that's about it for today. And let me know which fighter you prefer. If like do you like Kamaru Usman's style? Do you think Gilbert Burns will get that belt? Maybe in the first rounds, in the first or the second round. I don't know. That fight it's going to be pretty interesting for sure. So I would like to remind you that there are no fights this week. Next week we're going to have some fights finally. And remember to tune in Mondays for results and analysis, and Wednesdays for predictions and analysis at 7 p.m. Follow Barborn Network at BarbornerNet. We're Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and remember, this is a conversation. Let me know what you think at Enrique Drums MX. This show can also be heard on the Barborner Radio Network on its 122 platforms. Please check out barborner.ca for all the news. Barborner, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, leave it. I'll see you on the next one. Let's get